All right, students, let me just start with some of these equations are not simple. Let me just lead with that. My name is Mr. Larson. Welcome to Wednesday, April 1st. And let me explain a little bit about what's going to be happening this week. This concept that we're going over is it's essential to your high school career, your math career. You have got to understand this concept. And you can see right here, some of these you're thinking, wait a second, we did these in 7th and 6th grade even. As we get further down the page, we're going to get into a little more complicated ones, but my point in just a little introduction is if you've had a hard time with this in the past, that's why we're doing it now. You're going to see, you just absolutely need to understand this. You're going to see some problems today worked a little differently than what you've seen in the past. Numbers 7, 15, and 16 especially, may be done a little differently. It's 7, 15, and 16. Are going to be done a little differently than maybe than you've seen before. That's the point. Hopefully, one of these ways that you see this concept work out is going to make sense. So with that bit of introduction, we're going to go through some of these, and by way of review, the reason it says simple is because as the week goes on, they're going to get a little more complicated. So these equations is kind of like the first step of the review. It's going to get a little more complicated. So let's see if this video maybe helps bring back or maybe cement in, or maybe for the first time helps you understand how these work. The point of these equations is to isolate the variable or simplify the equation or solve for the variable. All those different ways to say the same thing. You guys remember PEMDAS. First do parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide together, and add and subtract together. When you're solving equations, you work backwards and you undo the equation in the opposite order. That's why on an equation like this down here, we're going to undo the add and subtract first, and then we'll undo the multiply and divide. Kind of like just the steps you do in the morning getting ready for the day. You do some of those steps in opposite order to end the day. Here we go. You can take a few minutes now, pause this video and write down some of these problems, even work some of them out if you'd like. Pause now, and then we're going to go through some of them. All right, here we go. I'm now done with the worksheet. April Fools. Had to find something to get in there with it being April 1st. We're now going to start the worksheet. To isolate the n, something to know about this equal sign is whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you do it on the other side of the equal sign. Sometimes on some of these, you'll want to add 15, but where do I add the other 15? Well, it's like a scale. It's like a scale. If you're adding 15 to one side, you're going to add 15 to the other side as well. You're going to do the same item on both sides of the equal sign. We're just going to raise everything up 15 to get that n by itself. So to add 15 to both sides turns this into 0. The 15 minus 15 plus 15 becomes 0, and can be written all on its own. And if you want to use a calculator, you can. Negative 23 plus 15, you end up with negative 8. Similarly, in undoing the operation, if this is 11 multiplied onto m, we undo that with the opposite operation. We divide by 11 on both sides. So m equals negative 6. And again, it doesn't matter if you have the m on this side of the equal sign or that side of the equal sign. We can talk about the properties of equality. If negative 6 equals m, then m equals negative 6. You'll see in your math career that math teachers and people like to see the variable written on the left-hand side. To get p alone over here, this plus 7, we have to undo this addition, so we use subtraction. Subtract 7 off of both sides. Use a calculator if you'd like. Get negative 18. So p, to isolate the variable, p is negative 18. And number 4, the 12 is divided off of the k, so we do the opposite operation. Multiply both sides by 12. K, because 12 divided by 12 is 1, that just becomes 1. We don't write the 1 because we're lazy. 12 times negative 9, negative 108. So k is negative 108. Then we get into some two-step equations. On these ones, we undo in the opposite order. So we're first of all going to undo add and subtract. We look over here from this A, what's connected onto this A, all of this over here. First, we'll undo this -5, this -5 that's sitting here. So we do the opposite of -5. We add 5 to both sides. Because that becomes 0, A over 4 is left alone on this side of the equal sign. -7 plus 5, use your calculator if you like, is -2. And then to get the A alone, you undo that divided by 4 by multiplying by 4 on both sides. So A, the 4's become 1, is -8. -8 is A, so A is -8. Okay, number 6. If you're thinking, well, that's not a simple equation. Well, it doesn't look very simple, does it? Well, it's because this 2 is divided off the entire side of the equal sign. So it's connected onto all of that. Well, to undo this divided first, we want to multiply the whole thing by 2 so that we can end up with k minus 4 all alone on this side of the equal sign. The way to get this k, trying to undo, trying to isolate it, the way to get rid of it is to times by 2 on both sides. So these 2's go to 1. We're lazy, we don't write it, so k minus 4 is on that side of the equal sign. -3 times 2 is -6. Now it's a one-step equation from before. Add 4 to both sides. You can use your calculator if you'd like. -6 plus 4 is -2. So k is -2. Those are the first parts of this work. Now number 7. As I mentioned before, you might see this done a little differently than you've seen in the past. Because you can see that, the first step, I can distribute the -2 to both sides. Well, let me show you something a little different. If you want to make it maybe a little, do this one step a little simpler to make it easier for you. This -2 is multiplied on to this entire side of the equation, the same way that this 2 was divided off. So we undid that by multiplying by 2 both sides. Over here, we can divide the entire side of the equation by -2. And by so doing, these just turn into 1, and we're just simply left with -4 plus m on that side of the equal sign, and then whatever -4 divided by -2 is on that side of the equal sign. Now, had you solved it by distributing the -2 and coming up with 8 minus 2m and working it through, you're going to get the exact same answer. I'm just showing you another step, another way is to just simply get rid of that -2, divide it off, turn it into 1 to make the equation simpler immediately. Then you just simply add the 4 to both sides, and m equals 6. Had you done that and worked it through all the way here, you'd get the same answer. And to just kind of show you, while we're on that vein, number 15 and 16, working those same principles, you can divide this entire side by -7 as your first step. And over here on 16, you can divide by 10 as your first step on both of those. It's a way to work those out, and we'll come back to those, but it's a way to work this out where you can simplify the numbers at the first step. We did one just like 8 over here with number 5. So if we look at number 9, same way we did 7, we divided by -2 first right here. We times both sides by 4 to begin with, so that this m plus 6 can be all by itself. Times by 4 and times by 4, so that those can go to 1 and we don't write it. 2 times 4 is 8. Then you can simply subtract 6 from both sides to get that m equals 2. Same thing with 11 and 12. If you multiply by 8 and multiply by 10 on these as your first step, that will help get that taken care of. On number 10, to get this v alone, we first of all don't divide. We first of all undo the add and subtract. Remember, we first of all undo this add and subtract before we undo any multiply and divide. We're undoing in the opposite order. So on this one, we would add 3 to both sides. Calculator helps us all the way. dividing by -4 on both sides. I know a clock, so I know that 60 divided by 4 is 15, and a negative divided by negative is, so V is 15. Again, that's just some quick math work. Calculator, -60 divided by -4. Divided by -4. Type in the -60 first in the calculator to accomplish that. We've talked about 11 and 12. Let's look at some of these other ones. Let's see. How about 13? To get this b alone, that -9 is multiplied on, so we leave it alone for a second. First of all, take care of this +2. There's nothing there. In our laziness, we don't like the positive sign so often, so I'm going to subtract the 2 off. So -9b's is -36. And then this -9 is multiplied on, so divide it off. B is whatever your calculator says -36 divided by -9 is. Whatever -36 divided by -9 is. Or if you wrote it the way that it looks right here as a fraction, -36 divided by -9, same exact thing. There's so many different ways to write the exact same number, the exact same operation in math. What's this going to look like? After you've divided off this -7 and divided -7 off of there, you can hit pause if you like and work it through. These -7s go to 1. So 6 plus r must be the exact same thing, must be exactly equal to, 2 negatives make a positive, 14 divided by 7 is 2, with a 0 there. Your calculator will get you +20. Then subtract the 6 off of both sides to get 14. Over here, same way, the reason to divide the 10 off is so that 3 plus x ends up all by itself, makes it simpler numbers to work with. And 180 divided by 10, zeros, so it's 18. Then by subtracting 3 off, we'll get those. These last two you can work out. Just make sure you subtract the 2 off first and then divide by -4. And over here, make sure you subtract the 2 off and then divide by 4 in that order. Once you've got this down, once you've got these simple equations down, you're ready for the days coming up, Thursday and Friday, where the equations get a little more complicated. So well done today. Hope you've enjoyed these 12 minutes. Happy April Fool's Day, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.